In 1911, the United States Supreme Court issued an historic ruling. It ordered the forced breakup of Standard Oil, the largest private corporation ever built in the history of the modern world. The man who owned it received the news in silence. Then, in the months that followed, his personal net worth increased 90%. That was the share of American oil refining that John D. Rockefeller controlled in 1913. Not through technology, not through natural talent, not through hard work. Through a mechanism his competitors couldn't see until it was already too late. The common story says Rockefeller got rich because of the oil boom. That's the wrong version. Rockefeller didn't ride the oil boom. Rockefeller built the gate that oil had to pass through, and then he charged admission to anyone who wanted to survive. The mechanism he used to build the gate is still operational today, only the name has changed. We're in the 1860s. Oil has just become the fuel of the future. Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia. Thousands of men pour into the industry. Independent refiners spring up everywhere. The market is chaotic, fragmented, brutal on prices. Everyone thinks the same thing. Oil is as good as gold. Just extract it and refine it. This is the dogma of the era. The product is king. John D. Rockefeller is 25 years old. He looks at the industry and sees something completely different from his contemporaries. He doesn't see a free market. He sees a system with a choke point. Oil has to be transported. It has to move from refineries to markets. And to do that, there is only one tool available at the time: the railroads. Whoever controls the railroads controls the flow. Whoever controls the flow controls the price. Whoever controls the price controls the market. Rockefeller doesn't ask how to extract more oil. He asks, how do I control the railroads? Rockefeller incorporates Standard Oil in Cleveland, Ohio. It's not yet the monopoly everyone knows. It's a refinery among many. But Rockefeller already has the final architecture in mind. First move, volume as a negotiating weapon. He approaches the railroad companies with the South Improvement Company scheme of 1872. The proposal is simple, but brutal in its logic. I guarantee you consistent, predictable shipping volumes. In return, I want reduced rates that none of my competitors will ever receive. The railroads agree. They have an interest in stable volumes. The result? Rockefeller pays less to ship oil than any independent refiner in the country. But this is only the visible layer of the deal. The invisible layer is the part that changes everything. Buried inside the agreement was a clause his competitors knew nothing about, the so-called drawbacks. Every time a Rockefeller competitor shipped oil on those same railroads, a percentage of the price paid by the competitor was secretly funneled back to Standard Oil. Translated into modern terms, Rockefeller was earning money every time his rivals ran their own business. He wasn't just competing in the market. He was extracting value from the very activity of his competitors. Second move, predatory pricing. With reduced shipping costs, Rockefeller can afford to drop the price of kerosene below his competitors' cost of production. The independent refiners don't understand what's happening. They assume it's a temporary price war. They hold out. Rockefeller continues. 1 month, 6 months, a year. The independent refiners start bleeding cash. Then they go into crisis. At that point, Rockefeller shows up, not as a predator, as a savior. I'll buy your refinery at a fair price given the circumstances. The circumstances are the ones he created. The acquisitions multiply. What historians call the Cleveland Massacre saw 22 of 26 refiners absorbed in just 3 months. The 1870s, the 1880s. The market consolidates, not through natural evolution, through deliberate design. The third layer of the mechanism is the most sophisticated. Rockefeller doesn't stop at refining. He builds his own pipelines to reduce dependence on the railroads. He acquires barrel manufacturers to cut storage costs. He controls retail distribution at the final mile. Every segment of the value chain gets progressively absorbed. This is called total vertical integration. The operating principle is surgical. Eliminate every intermediary that can raise costs or reduce control. In 1882, Standard Oil becomes the first trust in American history, a complex structure engineered to circumvent state laws that restricted corporate activity across state lines. The ownership stakes of dozens of companies are transferred to a single board of trustees. Standard Oil no longer owns just one refinery. It owns an integrated network stretching from Ohio to Pennsylvania, from Virginia to the Midwest. 90% of American refining capacity sits under a single decision-making umbrella. At this point, the remaining competitors can no longer compete on price. They can't compete on distribution. They can't even reach their own end customers without passing through infrastructure that Rockefeller directly controls or indirectly influences. The market is not free. It never was. Not since Rockefeller began building. But nobody knows it officially. Not yet. Here is the center of everything. Every strategic decision Rockefeller made, from the railroads to vertical integration to the forced acquisition, obeyed a single law. This is not a tactic. It is a physical law of finance. Control the distribution, not just the product. Oil was the product. Everyone had it. The railroads, the pipelines, the distribution channels, the nationwide retail network. That was the distribution. Everyone had oil. Only Rockefeller controlled the path that oil had to travel to become money. This distinction is not semantic. It is the difference between participating in a market and owning the market. A product, no matter how excellent, generates linear wealth. Whoever owns the distribution generates structural wealth, meaning they earn on every transaction that happens in the market regardless of who is selling what. Rockefeller wasn't competing with the refiners. He was using them as flow generators through infrastructure he controlled. His obsession with numbers completed the picture. From adolescence, he recorded every cent earned and spent in a personal ledger he called Ledger A. This wasn't paranoia. It was total visibility over the system. You cannot optimize what you don't measure. You cannot consolidate what you don't understand down to the last operational detail. His personal discipline, no alcohol, no tobacco, near military habits, was not moralism. It was the outward reflection of a mind applying that same austerity to business. Zero waste, zero inefficiency, zero sentimentality toward struggling competitors. Ida Tarbell's 19-part expose in McClure's magazine turned public opinion decisively against Rockefeller. The federal government passes the Sherman Antitrust Act. The Department of Justice files suit against Standard Oil. The Supreme Court orders the breakup. Standard Oil is divided into 34 independent companies that would become Exxon, Mobil, and Chevron. The market cheers. The newspapers celebrate the end of the monopoly. Rockefeller, who held shares in all 34 companies, watched the value of his holdings multiply in the months that followed. The new companies, freed from the centralized structure, became more agile. Their stock prices rose. Rockefeller's net worth increased after the biggest legal defeat of his life. This is not a lucky paradox. It is the mathematical consequence of having built real value inside the system, not just in the structure that contained it. Whoever owns pieces of an efficient system doesn't lose when the system changes shape. The question that matters: does the mechanism still exist? It doesn't just exist. It operates today with a precision Rockefeller couldn't have imagined. The oil is called attention. The railroads are called digital platforms. The distribution is called traffic. In 2026, the digital market replicates the structure of the 19th century oil market with mechanical fidelity. Thousands of creators, brands, and entrepreneurs build excellent products. They compete on price, quality, and positioning. And then they hope the platform will distribute them. TikTok's For You page algorithm, Instagram's Reels algorithm, Amazon's search rankings, Google's organic results. These are Rockefeller's railroads. Whoever depends on a single one of these platforms is in the same position as the independent refiners of 1875, at the mercy of the algorithm, exactly as those refiners were at the mercy of the railroad rates. The practical play is this: don't just build a product, build a distribution structure you own. An email list is a pipeline you can't buy, but one nobody can take from you. An audience spread across multiple platforms reduces dependence on any single algorithm. A paid acquisition funnel with proprietary data gives you full visibility into your customers' acquisition costs, exactly as Rockefeller had full visibility into every cent of his shipping costs. Whoever controls the traffic to their own market is Rockefeller in 2026. The anti-pattern to avoid is equally clear. The independent refiner of 1875 believed the market was free. He believed that with a good product and a competitive price, he'd have fair access to customers. He didn't know the rules of transportation had already been secretly renegotiated by someone else. Today, building a business that is 100% dependent on a single platform is the exact equivalent of that mistake. The platform changes the algorithm. It reduces organic reach. It raises advertising costs. The business that never built its own distribution discovers it controls nothing. Rockefeller said one thing about competition: competition is a sin. He didn't say it out of arrogance. He said it as a statement of a law he had understood before anyone else. Competition burns resources. It destroys margins. It reduces every participant to the mediocrity of the average. Whoever builds structural control over distribution stops competing. They start collecting. The final lesson is not moral, and it's not illegal. It is architectural. If you're not building control over your distribution, you are building a product that someone else will distribute for you on their terms, on their timeline, when they decide. That was true in 1870. It is true in 2026.